What do we need it for? How's it gonna help her anyway?
I can't explain in words you'd understand.
Well, fucking try me.
Time is her enemy, Sheriff.
What's up, everybody? Greg and Ryan here for another breakdown of Castle Rock. This is episode 6, Filter.
Now, there are spoilers ahead. If you have not watched the episode, go watch it and then get your butt back here.
Oh yeah. But first, make sure to subscribe to Universe, where we got you covered for comic deep dives, TV breakdowns, and movie reviews. Okay, initial thoughts from the episode. Right off the bat, I just want to say I really like the sci-fi elements that are in here. And the last 10 minutes, the second that Ruth drops her pills, it's on.
It's tension from there on out.
Yes.
It's
anxiety-filled 10 minutes that I was just tensed up the entire time. It's great.
You've got the whole breakdown from Odin and Willie, and you've got like such a tense and good twist to the Pangborn kid kind of relationship that's going on, and all of it is just, it really keys you up for the next episode. It's like, this was probably the most cliffhangery episode of the series so far. I mean, you know, obviously there was like a height of tension with the shooting at Shawshank, but that resolved itself. And it was a question of what would happen next. This is like, what? Hey! The sci-fi thing got me too. Like, I love the kind of sci-fi that is about sort of psychological paranoia and confusion. And Ruth is sort of that character right now. It's got a very sort of Philip K. Dick quality, and she's maybe not time traveling, although I was starting to suspect from a couple previous episodes that there was a little bit of a time travel thing going on. But we definitely get at least her perspective on that now. She sees herself as sort of multi-dimensional, as a psyche, and she uses the chess pieces to center herself. She explains that to Henry's son Wendell. And it gives us a lens through which to view some of her behavior from previous episodes. Yes. Although I think the most interesting expression of that so far was actually in this episode, and that has to do with the scene where Henry brings Wendell to see her. But we'll talk about that a little bit later.
Okay, a little plot bookkeeping here. So Alan doesn't shoot the kid. It starts right off, actually, like maybe the next day, I'm assuming. And the kid makes Alan go find Warden Lacey's car that he offed himself in.
Right, and Alan goes and negotiates at gunpoint the acquisition of the car. And, you know, the kid kind of manipulated him into doing that. And, you know, at the end, he's sort of got a plan for that. And this is actually the first time that you said this before, but this is the first time that I felt like, okay, maybe there is a Leland Gaunt connection to the kid. That thing of playing on the desires and fears of somebody in Castle Rock and manipulating them to go and do something. You know, he says it's for a monument, but, you know, there could be almost any kind of nefarious purpose behind it. It also does sort of bring back the question that is kind of an ongoing one of, like, is the kid evil? And this time, the kid was definitely not Mr. Cool.
No.
Or Mr. Good. Although we talked about this, if you had been trapped in a cell for 27 years,
be pissed off.
If you were a good person, you might still kind of have a little bit of a revenge fantasy about the people who put you down there.
Why would you leave me in that trunk, Sheriff?
Ruthie!
That final scene had me thinking for a second that, okay, he is evil. That was premeditated. This is some creepy stuff with this kid's going on now. The blood, but we'll get into that a little bit later. I'm still not 100% positive that this kid is evil. I just don't get that vibe yet.
Maybe.
Next, Molly confesses to Henry that she killed his dad, and he thinks she's crazy, and he won't believe a single thing that's going on here in this town yet. I don't know at this point what's it going to take for him to start realizing, okay, there's something bigger going on.
Right. I mean, this is the fourth consecutive episode, in fact, that she's tried to explain herself to him.
Her powers, it doesn't work.
This is the first time she was able to get it out that she killed Matthew Deaver, and this time, you know, she explains it as a sort of collaborative effort. And we had somebody in the comments from last week actually bring up the possibility that Henry, perhaps in the past, had been controlling her to do that. And her version of events kind of actually corroborates that theory a little bit. The idea that, you know, she's like, we did that together. You hated your father and I helped you do that thing. And I feel like his reaction was a little bit, I think you're right, it's that, you know, he's writing off as crazy, but
I don't think he believes that she did it. I think he just thinks that she's crazy and trying to spout off some stuff, and he just, that sucks.
He's definitely got the wall up and continues to, and I mean, obviously, I think that's what gets him into the situation he's in at the end of that episode.
Hey!
Next up, the kid goes to Juniper Hill, the psychiatric hospital.
5 minutes later.
And then the kid leaves Juniper Hill. I loved that whole segment. You didn't have to show a single thing from the hospital. It just play it through the radio, the fire, and then Alan's like, oh God, here we go. Like he knew, like, oh, well, I gotta go get this car. This kid.
I gotta go back and get the car.
You know, this kid's gonna be waiting for me when I get back to the house. Like he knew already that, oh, some shit just went down. I loved it, and the kid just comes right back. That's it. That's the end of it.
That was a just fantastic plot deflation right there. Of like, you know, we're like 2 episodes ago, it's like, you know what you can do? You could take the kid to Juniper Hill. And it's like, yeah, but they're not open till Monday, so you gotta keep them around for a couple of days, and then it's like, great, finally, take him to Juniper Hill. It's like, that didn't work, that didn't stick. That was, he was there for 5 minutes.
Oh my God!
That's the second time this week.
Let's walk back to some of that science fiction stuff, right? So we actually get finally introduced to Odin Branch and Willie. I think this sequence is easily kind of the main meat of this episode. And this is where it's explained to Henry that, you know, the force that is present is a sound, it's auditory, and it's affected by the sounds of the rest of the world, and some people hear it, some people can't hear it. And the person who is expressing this, Odin Branch, is an acoustic scientist and refers to it as the schisma. And we learn a few more interesting things.
He worked with Reverend Deaver.
Right. So that's a big thing, is that, you know, I've sort of been going along thinking that, you know, a lot of the Matthew Deaver stuff is kind of in the past, you know, that, you know, he disappeared and maybe so did his sort of cult of followers. And now these two appear, and I mean, I think Willie's too young, but Odin knew Matthew Deaver and they have similar interests. And the way he talks about their relationship was that it seems like, and you know, because Henry questions him a little bit, that there was a good sort of union between them, between the scientist and the preacher, that they were able to work together. And, you know, Matthew Deaver figured out how to create the filter, but he never was able to do it. And here, the filter has been created. It's in the Winnebago that belongs to Odin Branch. This raises some questions about whether these guys are even good or bad. I mean, the tone of the scientist and discovery was very positive, but it's still hard to think about somebody who is involved with Matthew Deaver could be good and Now, the crazy scientist who made himself deaf so he could hear the voice of God sounds crazy, but then when we get to how tonight he's going to correct
Willie,
it starts getting a little bit dark.
and poor Willie, his face every time. What are they gonna do? What's he gonna do to me?
And actually, that's kind of a good point, because he looks nervous. He definitely has a little bit more of like a what have I gotten myself into than a like converted cultist who has the passion that like Lacey had when he captured the kid. You know, it's like he doesn't seem to have that passion.
See, when he pulls up that rod out of the fire, I'm thinking, first I was confused, and now I'm thinking, is he really gonna use that for Willie and put it in his ears? I can't imagine that's what's going on. But Henry, for what it's worth, he did try to get out of there quickly. The first time around, he's like, all right, guys, I don't know what the hell you guys are doing out here, but I'm getting the out. And again, speaking about if they're good or bad, they do bring up Wendell's name. He never brought that kid's name up at all. So they know more about him than he probably knows.
They know
So,
what's up.
again, that tells me that they are following him from the beginning and they're trying to get something out of him. We just don't know what that is yet. Okay, when Henry's inside that filter, we get a bunch of flash frames.
Right, and it's not a lot of new stuff in there. There's there's a lot of woods.
The cage stuff again.
The cage stuff again, but there is
one shot of a person slitting the wrist. I don't know who that is exactly just yet because they have rings on and I didn't notice any rings on anybody in the show yet. So this looks like it could be something they're gonna go back and talk about later. Finally, so Odin speaks twice in this episode. The first time I was like, oh, okay, cool. And then the second time he scared the shit out of me with this line.
Not yeah, perfect.
man, when that dude talks, it is freaky.
Because he did this to himself, by the way. He wasn't deaf.
No, that was a self-inflicted deafness.
Finally, let's go back to Ruth for a moment. I really love Sissy Spacek's acting. Her way of going in and out of dementia with Henry, where he can't even call her out on it because he'll look just like an asshole if he does it. It's great. Where she can just all of a sudden try to forget something and you don't know whether or not she's actually telling the truth. And you can tell she's probably not.
Oh yeah, I mean, it definitely feels like about half the time at least that she's acting it. You know, that she's like taking advantage of somebody else thinking that she's crazy.
This reminds me of the old George Carlin stand-up bit where he talks about how he's, like, when he gets old enough that he might just slip in and out of dementia just to keep his kids on their toes.
You look around the dining room table and you say, "Who are you people and where's my horse?" Then you stare at your eldest son and say, "Agnes, I haven't seen you since First Communion." F***s them up.
And that's what it felt like to me.
That's what she's doing. But, you know, she does provide in earnest an explanation to Wendell, right? They're playing chess. They've got some improvised chess pieces. There's a bottle of Tabasco on the table, among other things. And he's asking where the other pieces are. And of course, we've seen this chess set before. It was a gift from Alan Pangborn. And, you know, she explains that she uses those chess pieces like breadcrumbs to help her remember what time she's in. And like this is, I mean, to me this is exciting because this is like one of, like I said before, this is like one of my favorite kind of science fiction stories where it's really more about the psychological part for the character. And I know that King isn't as big on the science fiction front, but you know, just talking about dimensional things and time travel makes that feel, to me, like a sci-fi element to the show. And her sort of jumping in and out is something I think we're going to be seeing more of.
They got to go somewhere with that. That's not any throwaway.
You know, it's been sort of background radiation so far, but I think this is going to become a thing. And I'm sort of excited for that because she's hidden all these pieces around the house. And we also have, you know, what I like, the security system. So I'm hoping we're gonna have one heck of an episode with some chess pieces and some beep, beep, beep. Door is open.
They brought back the doors open thing.
It was in there.
I was wrong. They brought it back.
But I think this is setting up probably an awesomely psychologically mind-bending episode in the near future. Like I feel like we might have that. Might even be the next episode.
Yeah, there's little clues here in this episode that give that away too, that there's more here that we're not seeing just yet. And that's obviously in the scene where Wendell shows up and he knocks on the door to talk to his mom to introduce him to Wendell, and she's like looking away at something else. They come in, give her a hug.
So that
They leave.
scene is bookended with Ruth looking to the side, and she doesn't interact with it or somebody or whatever's going on there, but we're definitely, I think so far that's my favorite sort of Ruth departure moment.
They're coming back to that. That's like a Rosencrantz and Guildenstern thing I think we're gonna get here. We'll see.
As for a couple of things we noticed, the first standout thing for me was at the funeral for Matthew Deaver, where our Odin and Willie show up and they have their motorhome. And that just immediately set off like a Dr. Sleep flag in my mind. So the book sequel to The Shining is Dr. Sleep, and in that story there's a sort of nomadic group of people called the True Knot that consume basically the essence of people with The Shining. And they travel around the country or around the world. It extends their life, so they're very old. It's sort of like a vampire story almost. And like these two people with the Winnebago definitely kind of fit that MO. And then when they started talking, I was like, nah, maybe not. I guess they seem vaguely on the level. But then once they get into the Winnebago and are like gonna trap him in that room, I was like, okay.
They're taking his Shining.
Maybe they are out to take his Shining. Like that seemed almost appropriate. I don't think that's what it is, but it's definitely got like an echo to Dr. Sleep in it. There was also another reference sort of in the dialogue, I would say, to The Shining. When Odin talks about making himself deaf, he says he corrected his problem and that on that night he was going to correct Willie too. And this reminded me of Delbert Grady from the Overlook Hotel, the former caretaker, telling Jack Torrance that he had to correct his family for not understanding or for defying him, and that Danny needed to be corrected too. He was portrayed in the 1980 film by Stanley Kubrick regular Philip Stone.
And when my wife tried to prevent me from doing my duty, I corrected her.
Okay, let's jump into final questions now. First up, here's a cool one. Is the kid actually Matthew Deaver reincarnated or something? Just throwing that out there.
I started to have some suspicion, not necessarily that he was Matthew Deaver, but that there was going to be some kind of like fusion of them when Henry brought him out in the previous episode to the guest house. And I thought, now that can't be a good idea.
No, remember what the psychiatrist says.
Other cases, you put someone back in their own home with their own junk and it's just like flipping a light switch.
Now that line could be about Henry himself, but also, again, it's the kid, and he's on the piano later in that episode, and he says, I remember.
That's something. I remember.
And even if he's not a reincarnation, I think we're looking at maybe a sort of fusion of the two of them as he finds himself in the environment of Matthew Deaver, as he's putting on his clothes and playing his piano. He's sort of assimilating Matthew Deaver.
About that too, is he taking over souls, or does this have to do more with the videos that he watched in the prison right before he got out, taking over a new personality, a new life?
Like, is the kid just a blank slate?
Yes.
You could put him in a different house and he would become a different person, or...
I don't know. It's they're not giving anything. It's so obscure still with everything they're giving us that it could be anything at the end of the day.
Actually, that's a good point. You do have to hand it to the show for keeping everything so well occluded through the 6th episode.
Yeah.
Like, you could be tearing your hair out over needing another new revelation, but like, we're getting, a layer or two at a time of the onion skin peeled off.
This is Lost, like season 3 at its prime of just giving you piece after piece, but there's another question added to every piece it gives you.
And actually, this raised the question between the two of us, which was, are the revelations paced in this way to drop everything kind of in a cavalcade in like episodes 9 and 10, or are we actually seeing more of a world building
for season
for
2.
like further seasons of the show? I mean, we found out actually this week that the show got renewed for a second season, so it's definitely going ahead.
Yeah.
And maybe some of this stuff just kind of snowballs into season 2.
The schisma stuff. I think that's something you got to look bigger picture. Maybe even Molly, because she's starting to take like a back seat to the plot a little bit here.
Yeah, especially with this episode.
Yes.
She just sort of, I mean, she did make her big confession, but she's just sort of like background in this episode especially.
And Jackie too, which she could be a character which is going to be a holdover to the next season. But we'll talk about the next season later when it happens. But for now, it does look like they're world building.
Yes.
Jesus Christ. Where's Ruth?
Why would you leave me in that trunk, Sheriff?
Ruthie!
Okay, and finally, let's talk about the fate of Ruth Deaver. Is she dead? I don't think so. Not at all. We didn't see a body. At the same time, I'm trying to figure out what happened in that room. I immediately thought, because I'm still waiting on my Pet Cemetery Cujo thing, I think that was a dog attack. That's just what I think happened.
I like your dog attack theory.
I think he got bit by a dog.
The way the show is building these kinds of scenes and stuff, it's like it's not going to be what it looks like immediately on the surface.
No.
Right, because the sort of setup to that scene is
she cut him and ran, or
like the sort of setup almost right is that like Pangborn was like tricked to leave town so that the kid could go and kill Ruth and like get his revenge, but there's no way that's the case.
No, nobody.
I think
she's out there somewhere, or maybe he beamed her out somewhere else. That scene wants to have you think that, okay, this kid is evil. He's bad.
Right.
I just get that little vibe that
I mean,
it's not
I'm not
the
buying
case.
that.
Yeah.
I'm not buying it.
I think a dog bit him or something, and Ruth is gone. She booked it.
Okay, now as we like to do when we get down to the end of a breakdown is to go back and look at some of your comments from last week. From Latasha De Jesus, I'm thinking the kid is linked to Henry's father. I think Henry's dad wasn't a good man, possibly an evil man, especially after the look on Henry's mom's face when they brought his remains back. I think the kid and the dad are linked somehow. Right, we just talked about this. You know, if they weren't before, I think moving him into the guest house had a lot to do with that. But there also are the moments of when Ruth is looking out the window and sees the kid in the suit, and she says, you know,
I could have sworn we buried him in that suit.
but then really that scene where she dropped the pills and he just casually walks in and hangs up the coat.
He takes his shoes off. I'm like, okay, is that Matthew Deaver?
Right. Like, if there's anything that sort of like seals the deal on Latasha's comment, that's the moment.
Yeah. Also, that's a wonderful shot, by the way, with Ruth on the ground looking up with the pills on the floor. I just wanted to shout that out. That's a really good shot.
That's an awesome shot, yeah. Damian Seamer wrote, I'm thinking there's a John Coffey situation going on with the kid. John Coffey chose to heal people with his gift, but he also chose to make the one guard go nuts. Maybe the power itself is neutral, it just depends on the intentions of the user. Both the kid and Coffey had that kind of confused, wandering about life look to them, and both were unjustly imprisoned. I'm not sure if Coffey didn't age, but Paul stopped aging after his encounter with him. Also, Mr. Jingles the mouse. There's a specific scene where the kid is staring at a mouse in a trap. I'm wondering if this will come back. I wanted to bring up Damien's comment because there have been a lot of people in the comments who have been drawing this connection to Coffey and the kid and sort of like looking at his force as on the more passive side or on the more, you know, less intentionally evil side. And I think that, you know, this is a good comment to call that out with. Annie Cash wrote, was that a flashback when the kid went to the home with the family celebrating the birthday? They had on dated outfits and the Shirley Temple song playing on a record player led me to believe that the kid went to the house and his memory was being restored like the doctor said would happen. Could the kid have been the one celebrating a birthday? A lot of people brought that scene up in the comments as a likely flashback. Mostly they referenced the music. And a bunch of people thought probably actually that he was the baby and not the kid having the birthday. But I do think it's an interesting interpretation of the scene that it is him remembering or getting his memories back instead of what I think was our knee-jerk interpretation of he just drives people insane wherever he goes.
Well, one thing about that scene I keep going back to is the shot of like a car. The lights are hitting him when he's in the house, and he just goes upstairs from there. Why would he have to do that unless the people who live there were coming home? That's a cool thing about it. I don't know if I believe that just yet, though. I feel like that this town sucks, and that just happened with his, whatever his power is.
And our last comment of the week comes from Mother Coconuts, Skarsgård butt.
Okay, that's it for us over here, everybody. We will see you all next week for episode 7.
And if there's anything we missed, let us know in the comments. We love to see what you thought. And you can also hit us up on Twitter. Our handles are in the description.
Yeah. And until next time, keep it tuned to GameSpot Universe. Bye-bye, everybody.